Humans have always looked to the skies, but one day we stopped just looking and started creating. And that, my friend, is when we realized something big. Who controls the sky? Controls everything. It doesn't matter how many boots you've got on the ground or how many ships are patrolling your coast. Once the enemy hits your airspace, you're done. They can strike our cities, wipe us out, and be back home before nightfall. That is, if we didn't have the best fighter jets in the world. Jets that are getting faster and smarter, adapting to threats before they even exist. This video dives into the evolution of these jets and why they're crucial in modern warfare. The sky is the limit, so why are fighter jets evolving so fast? The answer is simple: competition. Every nation wants the edge, that next breakthrough to dominate the skies. This creates constant innovation, pushing technology beyond limits that seemed impossible just a decade ago. We're living in a world where jets are becoming more autonomous. No, that's not science fiction. It's happening right now. But before we dive into the future, let's take a step back and look at where it all began. Era of improvisation, 1903 to 1918. You see, jets didn't start as the badass machines we know today. Nope, they were a joke. Imagine this: a guy strapped into a rickety wooden plane, holding a pistol, trying not to plummet to his death while shooting at another guy who's doing the exact same thing. Yeah, that was air combat at the start. But guess what? Those fearless, or just plain crazy pilots laid the foundation for the high-speed war machines we see dominating the skies today. So, let's rewind to 1903, December 17th. The Wright brothers pull off a 12-second flight at Kitty Hawk. Not much, right? But enough to change everything. Within a decade, World War I hit, and suddenly, the sky was a whole new battlefront. At first, planes were just fancy binoculars in the sky. Pilots would fly over enemy lines, spotting stuff and sending signals. But soon, they realized something huge. If you can see from the sky, you can kill from the sky. Pilots started literally shooting each other with pistols. Then came the machine guns. But the real game changer? Anthony Fokker's synchronization system. With it, they could shoot through the propellers without blowing up their own planes. And boom, the modern fighter jet was born. That's when Germany changed the game. They introduced the Fokker-Eindecker, the first real fighter to dominate the skies. The German pilots weren't just better trained than the Allies, at least in the early years of the war. They had discipline, technique, and guts. The air was their domain, and no one else could touch them. But no pilot shone brighter than Manfred von Richthofen, aka the Red Baron. 80 kills, a plane painted like a fire truck, and the stuff of legend. When he went down in 1918, his name was already burned into the history books. Era of air engineering, 1919 to 1939. After World War I, aviation didn't just stop there. Nope, it actually exploded. Tech got insane, and planes went from being breezy death traps to flying killing machines. Take the Boeing P-26 Peashooter, the first all-metal monoplane. This thing was fast and nasty in a dogfight. Sure, it wasn't the fastest of its time, but it could outmaneuver the competition. Meanwhile, Germany's Luftwaffe started creeping out of the shadows across the pond. They didn't care about the Treaty of Versailles. They used civilian aviation as a cover to build up a secret air force. And boy, were they ready to take the skies. In the UK, the Supermarine Spitfire was in the works, designed to be a fighter that could outlast anything in the air. This thing was the stuff of nightmares for the enemy. But Japan was ahead of the curve too. Their Mitsubishi A6M0 was fast, agile, and nearly impossible to beat in the early years of World War II. These babies, crafted in the shadows of peacetime, would soon unleash hell on a scale the world had never seen. Well, except for the P-26. Poor thing didn't see much action. The sky goes nuclear, 1939-1945. The World War II had the most epic air battles. They were fast, furious, and straight-up savage. And for the first time in history, air power alone would decide an entire campaign. The Battle of Britain, On one side is the legendary Supermarine Spitfire, with sleek design and unmatched agility. On the other, the fearsome Messerschmitt Bf-109. It was fast, deadly, and flown by some of Germany's best pilots. These weren't just dogfights. They were life-or-death duels that would decide the fate of an entire nation. Every clash over the English Channel meant one thing: survive or let your country fall. British pilots, often outnumbered and exhausted, flew it with everything they had, refusing to back down. Victory in the air meant survival on the ground. The Spitfire became a symbol of defiance, resilience, and hope. And somehow, against all odds, they held the line. The skies above Britain became a wall the Nazis couldn't break through. Thanks to those wings, the UK lived to fight another day. Across the Pacific, Japan's Mitsubishi Zero ruled the skies early on. It was fast, agile, and nearly untouchable. But then the US brought in the big guns, the F-6F Hellcat and the F-4U Corsair. Suddenly, the Japanese pilots were no longer the apex predators. Meanwhile, over in Europe, the Allies had a new ace up their sleeve: the P-51 Mustang. This beast could fly long distances, escort bombers deep into enemy territory, and dominate in dogfights. Once the Mustang hit the skies, Germany's Luftwaffe started losing its grip on the air. Fast. But if there was one aircraft that felt like it came from the future, it was the Me-262, the first jet fighter ever used in combat. Faster than anything the Allies had. It could have changed the game, but it came too late. By the time it was unleashed, the war was already winding down. Cold War chaos, 1947 to 1970. Fast forward to the Cold War. Tensions between the US and the USSR were about to boil over. The first real jet dogfights went down over Korea in what would be called MiG Alley. On one side, you had US pilots in their F-86 Sabres, and on the other, Soviet-backed North Korean and Chinese pilots flying the deadly MiG-15s. These jets were something else entirely, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. By the 60s, fighter jets were a whole new beast. Missiles, radar, you name it. With weapons like the AIM-9 Sidewinder, you could take out enemies from miles away without even seeing them. The battlefield evolved, and the difference between life and death became incredibly small. Technology evolves, 1970-1990. By the time the F-14 Tomcat arrived, it was clear that air combat had entered a new era. Its variable wings, insane speed, and unmatched agility were every pilot's dream machine. Then came the F-15 Eagle, a fighter that never lost a combat engagement. Ever. The Soviets weren't resting either. They rolled out the Su-27 and MiG-29. But the US wasn't about to sit back. They struck back with the F-117 Nighthawk. This stealthy beast was the future of warfare, capable of slipping past radar detection and striking from the shadows. The fifth generation, 1990 to 2020, soon, fighter jets started feeling like something straight out of science fiction. The F-35 Lightning II was the perfect example of this. A flying command center, fully integrated with everything on the battlefield, providing pilots with more intel than they could even process. It had the ability to tap into a vast network of battlefield data, from satellite feeds to ground sensors, allowing pilots not just to react to threats, but to literally predict them. It was like having an entire team of analysts working alongside you 24/7. And now, the future is already here. Drones are taking over, and unmanned aerial combat is no longer a far-off dream. Prototypes for fighter drones like the Loyal Wingman and XQ-58 Valkyrie are already in development. Honestly, human pilots might become a thing of the past. I recently learned that AI is training to outfly us. I'm not joking. An algorithm beat a top Air Force pilot 5-0 in a virtual dogfight. So yeah, the sky is about to get a whole lot crazier. We're heading towards a world where fighters won't need pilots, where AI makes the decisions, not humans. And whoever dominates the sky will rule the world for centuries to come. The next video is gonna be even crazier, so hit that subscribe button for more. Catch you in the next one.